entrepreneurship is a team sport. It's not a solo sport. And don't focus on coming up with something cool. All your product or service should aim at solving a problem. But it's almost always a disadvantage to be the first to come up with an idea. So if you think of starting a business and you are not scared, don't start, because the decision to start a business is a very tough decision, and everybody, no exception, everybody feels scared about it. Simply because starting and growing a business is very risky. The risk is not why you shouldn't start a business, but as an entrepreneur, all you need is to calculate the risk and the loss and see if there's a risk-reward balance. And then you have to take the decision. If you are home, not employed, I think this should be an easy decision for you, because you are just like somebody in a burning airplane. Whether you stay on the airplane or you jump, you are going to die anyway. The airplane is on fire. You better jump, because if you are lucky, somebody may catch you mid-air and become alive. So if you are home not doing anything, unemployed, you shouldn't hesitate, but instead start. But the decision is much difficult for those of you who have jobs, who have some responsibilities, parents, children, other family members that you need to support. It becomes very difficult because you think of the consequences of failure. And one of the ideas that scare people the most is the fact that when you start a business, within the first 5 years, 90% collapse, or just 10% will make it. They are not talking about you, the entrepreneur. They are talking about the business. And you need to make that separation. The business is different from the person. Of course, you may start a business today that will collapse in about a year or two. But most of the people who have had initial failures in other businesses have gone ahead to create massive businesses. So when your business fails, it doesn't mean you have failed. In fact, you can see it as success, because your business failing means you have discovered one more way that doesn't work. Most of the people who have business failing go on to create something bigger than themselves, something that they couldn't have ever been able to achieve if they have remained employees in other people's companies. Those who follow the right processes achieve high success rate. And should you fail, it doesn't mean that's the end. It means learn from that experience and move on to something even bigger than you started with. After all the big companies that you see around, hardly has any company become successful with their initial idea. And there's this myth that to become an entrepreneur, you need to be very smart, come up with great ideas. In fact, coming up with great idea is the easiest part, but implementation is the hardest part. Anybody can come up with great ideas. Anybody. But how to implement the business to ensure success is what separates successful entrepreneurs from the failed ones. If you are prepared to change your initial idea to something even better, then it's more unlikely that you are going to fail. So there's this misconception that, to start a business, you need to be young and energetic. The earlier you start, the better. But if you are old, it doesn't mean it's too late for you. It means you have a lot of experience that you can start with. And that will cut the time you need to become successful. So don't ever think entrepreneur is for only young guys. Actually, the average age of a successful company is 45 years. You have to know that entrepreneurship is a team sport. It's not a solo sport. So most of the successful companies weren't started by one person. You don't start a company with one person. It's almost always advisable to form a team. At least get a co-founder. When you talk about co-founder, it's not an employee where you pay him or her a month, but it's somebody who is going to have a share in your company, who is bringing something that you don't have. Knowledge, energy, money, whatever. So that the two of you can go on a journey. And when there are two of you, it's much better. Because sometimes when you give up, the other person will have the energy to keep going. And when he or she gives up, you also have the energy. So you support each other along the way. In fact, most successful businesses were started by two or more people. But almost always you hear only one name. Talk about Microsoft, you hear of Bill Gates. Talk about Apple, you hear of Steve Jobs. Simply because there's always one person who is the face of the company. But all of them were started by two or more people. So if you want to reduce your risk of going broke or unsuccessful business, always form a team, because entrepreneurship is a team sport. The more people you have in the team who have stake in the business, the higher your chances of becoming successful. And also, don't come up with a cool product. In fact, it's almost always a disadvantage to be the first to come up with the idea. Simply because you do all the hard work, all the groundwork, all the failures. And some smart guy will look at what you have done, see all the mistakes, and then come up with a better way to implement the same idea, and he or she becomes successful. Facebook wasn't the first, Apple wasn't the first, Google wasn't the first, but look at them now. You have to be fast and come out. But don't aim to be the first to come out. No, that shouldn't be your aim. Your aim is to come out with something as good as possible for you to get the necessary feedback that you need. And don't focus on coming up with something cool. All your product or service should aim at solving a problem. And somebody will ask, if coming with a great company is all about solving problems, why is TikTok so successful? What problem are they solving? Yes, TikTok is solving a problem. The problem is boredom. Okay? If you are there and you are bored, take your phone, you open your TikTok, you can scroll before you realize 2 hours is gone. People are bored. So don't think all the problems are going to be functional, but there are emotional and psychological problems that when you solve, in fact, you can become a billionaire. So entrepreneurship can be risky, of course, just like any endeavor, playing football, whatever. Everything is risky. Everything has some risk in there. Entrepreneurship is no exception. But if you follow the right process, your chance of becoming successful is almost 100%. In fact, your first company might fail, but you will not fail so long as you learn from your first failure and move on to your second best idea. The more you keep going, the higher your chances of becoming successful. So what are you waiting for? Just dive in and start your business today. My name is Obrempong Toku the 8th. This is my podcast where I share with you practical guidelines in business, leadership, and innovation. All I want from you is to like, share, and subscribe to my show to be part of the business creators movement, creating the next wave of entrepreneurs that will create jobs, opportunities, and fulfilling life for yourself and others. I'll see you in my next episode. Bye-bye.